Yeah, so let us start. I'm delighted to introduce Jyotirmoy Prodhani to all of you. Jyotirmoy and I go a long way back to 1990 when we were students in the Department of English in the University of Pune. Jyotirmoy Prodhani is a professor of English literature at Northeastern Hill University, that is NEHU, Shillong. He has translated Madhopur Bohudur, which is a collection of Srila Bhadra's Assamese short stories. This Land, This People is his forthcoming anthology of Rishi poems in translation. He has coordinated a national workshop on film appreciation in NEHU. Two of his scholars are working under him on Assamese adaptation and Indian animation films. Jyotirmoy is also working on the biography of Prathamesh Barua and his cinema. As we can see, he is deeply embedded in the milieu of Assamese literature and culture. So we look forward to his insights into the film Bulbul Can Sing, made by Rima Das. Welcome, Jyotirmoy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Geeta. Basically, I'm here not really to speak so much about the film, but to listen to you people. But to get the ball rolling, I'll just say some of my observations on this particular film. First of all, I thank Geeta for having given me this opportunity to be here, as well as also encouraged me to see that particular film, Bulbul Can Sing. In fact, I had seen that the earlier one, The Village Rockstar, Bulbul Can Sing was not yet, I didn't see that yet until Geeta told me about this particular film. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Somebody's mic is on, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible. You're audible.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
You're audible. You're audible. You can go ahead. We are all just going to mute our mics.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
How old is it? How old is it?
Can I start now? Yeah. First of all, when it comes to Rima Das's films, my observation is this, that the first film, that is Village Rockstar, what is so striking about this particular film, two particular aspects are very important, in my opinion. That is the way she has made that particular film.
You were there.
Because making cinema has a different kind of parameters, different kind of equations involved. But as an individual filmmaker, she has shown a different kind of way on how to make a film and how one can actually make it possible to make a film with the bare minimum as the kind of basic equipment that she did. And secondly, second important aspect of that particular film would be the title itself.
No, it's like we become restless, na? How much people deal with phones? You know, when I go for a walk, I never carry my phone. Never. I never carry it. Because it's right here. I mean, actually, even when I used to go out, I never used to carry it out of the gate. Never carry the phone. People actually
Nandini, excuse me, Nandini.
Yes.
Mute your microphone. Nandini, please mute your microphone.
They have to have that thing stuck there.
Nandini, mute your phone.
I mean, I can feel it happen to me.
Nandini, can you mute your phone, please?
Oh, I get damn irritated. And there are people, you know, like I actually tell like students when they come to my office, they know that their phone has to be in their bag. And they'll very apologetic, man, and take this call and all. I say, yeah, but I mean, they know that I really dislike it. So they don't even keep their phones outside.
Nandini, can you mute your mic?
Many people, yeah, even friends, they can't steal from their phones.
Nandini, mute your phone.
different kind of a manner in a sense. That is how cinema of this kind is also possible. That is one. And secondly, which is important about this particular film, the first thing is that the title of the film. And this particular title, this Village Rockstar, the name itself, a film coming from Assam or the Northeast, and an aspiration to have a guitar, has some kind of a Northeast dimension, because Northeast normally is associated with rock bands, associated with the guitar. And when a film comes with that particular title, the expectations are slightly different. Then they would think it might be kind of an aspiring rock group, or might be something to do with Western music. So on that count, I would say that particular title, that is slightly misleading given the film, because this is an entirely different film. What people would expect from a Northeast with that kind of a title. That is one. But nevertheless, this particular film definitely has actually caught our imagination and all over the places. And this is also a kind of a cinema that reminds you a kind of a film made by, say, Abbas Kiarostami of Iran, who is also the one who would be making films about the expression of children, about the expression of the young people. That is what she has done, Timma Das. And secondly, when it comes to the second film, that is Bulbul Can Sing, I would say that between the two films, Bulbul Can Sing is a far shows her job. Another aspect that I would like to draw your attention to is that the language of the film. What's so significant about the language of the film is this is not an Assamese mainstream language. The mainstream or standard Assamese, you can say. This particular film is made in a kind of dialect of Assamese language. This is a dialect from and quite simply, the dialect has not been language of acceptance in mainstream cinema yet, in mainstream Assamese cinema. So this particular cinema also has a kind of very strong regional dimension, because this is a film done entirely in a kind of a dialect, not in the mainstream language or in standard Assamese. That is one. And secondly, this dialect also has another kind of dimension. That is, this is the dialect which is, of course, ancient languages of Assam. And in this language, a lot of ancient literatures were. Somehow this is not part of the standard language per se. But this dialect in mainstream media, be it cinema, be it theater, serials, and other kind of forms, language is mostly used as a kind of language of comedy. The characters who is a comic figure might be using this particular language. So this is significant in the sense that Rima Das has given a kind of a legitimacy to this particular language, because she is now speaking, she has now given this language as a kind of a centrality in a mainstream cinema. That's what is important from that count. And apart from that, what I have also seen in this, what I have marked out in this particular film, of course, this is, all of you would say this, it's a kind of rites of passage cinema, that a cinema of growing up, cinema of teenage individual into a kind of, which I have found, I tried to listen to this. It's not visible or audible, you can say, in a sense that because they're not delivering dialogues, they're just conversing, they're speaking with each other. So that natural kind of element that has been brought out in this particular film is extremely remarkable, I would say. Because when I was also looking at this dialogue, because almost all of them are non-actors. Nobody has done a film earlier. They're just ordinary individuals picked up for this particular film in front of the camera. And nobody is conscious about the camera. they're just speaking to each other. So that is one very remarkable aspect of this particular film. That is, this is a kind of film which is without dialogue, only a kind of conversations happening in this particular film, and which can be appreciated more perhaps if you look at this particular film. And one striking scene would be, in my case, when after the suicide of Bonnie, when they bring those morphed photographs, the framed photographs. You might have marked those things, that they went to a studio, they had taken those photographs. And one very subtle kind of imagery and tragedy she brought in that photograph is that the photograph of Bonnie, who had committed suicide, and that particular boy, was put against the background of Taj Mahal. And the photograph of Bulbul and her friend, I think his name is Diraj or something, his friend, whatever, his friend. What happened, their photograph is in front of Qutub Minar. So this is kind of subtle narrative she has brought in, that if two lovers are there in front of Taj Mahal, one has to die. The tragic element is there in this particular photograph. And in case of the photograph of Bulbul and her friend, this is in front of Qutub Minar. Qutub Minar, we can also associate this with a kind of a phallic metaphor, this particular Qutub Minar. So there we shall find some kind of continuity, possibilities of continuity in this particular, in particular sensation. But Bulbul again quite significantly would say that she did not like her background in that particular photograph. She wanted Taj Mahal to be her background rather than Qutub Minar. Also, it underlines different kind of desire of Bulbul as a protagonist. Perhaps she wanted to come out of this relationship or whatever. So these are my kind of view on the film. On the larger aspect of it, when it comes to cinema from Northeast in contemporary times, we have seen cinema in Assam and Northeast is taking a particular kind of a direction. Direction in the sense that it happens almost all the regional films, that they try to become a very poor copy of Bollywood. They try to bring those kind of melodramatic elements, those kind of Bollywoodish sort of aspects into the film, very dramatic kind of cinema. But now in recent times, among the young people who have seen that, they're trying to deviate from this particular kind of a tendency or a desire, you can say. In that, the young people in the Northeast who are doing their films in a different manner one is Dominic Sangma. He is from Garo Hills. He speaks Garo from Meghalaya. And his cinema, he has tried to bring in different kind of dimension to cinema of Northeast as such, trying to give a kind of character. Another young filmmaker is Pawan Haubam. He is from Manipur. He also brings in a different kind of narrative to the cinema, which is entirely different than that of mainstream Indian or Bollywood cinema as such. Then in recent times, of course, there is another film which most of you might be knowing that is Amis. Amis, Hazarika's film, Amis, also tried to bring in different kind of dimension. But again, among the young directors, the tribal filmmakers like, say, Dominic Sangma, even Pradeep Kurba, there's another Khasi director, he is. Then this Manipuri young boy that is Pawan Haubam. They brought in a kind of very Northeast kind of a dimension to the cinema. And Rima thus belongs to that particular kind of a league to a large extent. But this is not the thing that only this kind of cinema is existing. Of course, mainstream cinema is very much there. Recently, some films are made which have made some crores of rupees in Assamese. So this thing is there. But what happens, they bring out a kind of a signature element of Northeast. And one aspect is this, like theater that is happening in Assam and Northeast, theater is gaining a kind of Northeast identity. So cinema also, to these kind of makers, is gaining a kind of Northeast identity. Apparent, you can say, destitute of a cinema becomes a very powerful statement in the films. These are things I'm just I wanted to share with you. Now I want to open the discussions and I want to listen more from you people. First, I would like to invite Geeta, and of course, everybody will chip in.
Thank you, Jyotirmoy, for those insights. As you were speaking, we have had two more guests. One is Nandini Manjrekar from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Bombay. And the other is Shongita Sen from Scotland. Shongita, I'm sorry, I don't know the name of your university. Could you tell us something about yourself?
Okay, so I'm from the University of I finished my degree. This was my second project. I worked on Indian political cinema of the 1970s. Yeah, that's about me today. So I'm so exhausted, but I was very curious to join you all for the on this film. I watched this film, but I did not have time to think about it so that I could contribute something meaningfully. But when Geeta told me to just come and witness, I'm just witnessing here. So if you I'll be kind of passive witness today. Thank you for inviting, Geeta, and thank you for organizing this. This is so amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Shongita. Yeah, would anyone like to say something about the film? Would you like to talk about your responses to it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Praveena. You'll have to unmute. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so just taking off on what he mentioned was a specific contribution perhaps of Assamese, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the one thing that I noticed very clearly about this film, which was novel for me, was the fact that yes, it deals with some social issues, perhaps particularly towards the end as the children their carefreeness world evaporates completely, and the morality of social norms comes like a clamp on their free-spiritedness. That was towards the end. And of course, implicitly, I think children are always a critique of adults, of the adult world that is being imposed, or social conventions. So in that sense, the children, so there is some social dimension to it. But I love the film for another reason, because I felt that even that was very low key for most of the time. What I just absolutely loved about the film was this everyday quality that, and I think Jyotirmoy Roy referenced that somehow, this everyday quality of watching the children at the water. This was beautiful moments there, or tending the pigs, or playing Ludo. It was that really for me was, and doing nothing in particular but playfulness that implied their innocence. And even the Bulbul, whose character was kind of central and coming of age story, etc. But mostly what I felt is she's curious, and curiosity of Bulbul, she was not like she was a rebel or anything. So it was her curiosity, even when the young boy from her school starts to write her letters, etc. It's not that she's really interested in him. She's just curious about love, it seems, right? So it's the curiosity of growing up that she was able to capture so very well. So I didn't feel it was a social issue or a social problem movie at all. And for me, the biggest protagonist in the whole movie was the landscape. And I think it was by setting these characters in all these very long shots and long takes, right? Beautiful, particularly towards the end, it gets even more lyrical or evocative in a sense. the sunrise, the sunsets, and I saw the landscape. Reminded me very much of a painter that many of you have probably seen him, Peter Bruegel's genre paintings. You might be familiar with them, right? In which Peter Bruegel basically started to paint peasants and everyday people as doing everyday things like plowing or whatever, or eating or sitting around, but as part of the earth, as part of something that is naturally embedded in nature, and the whole movie reminded me of Peter Bruegel's landscape kind of. So anyway, I'll leave that. My two-bit contribution, of course, was that it was very, very touching, and it wasn't a dramatic film in that sense. It wasn't a conflict-ridden film in that sense with a resolution or social problem. To me, it was this beautiful painting, almost a painting of landscape that came through. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Praveena. Before we move on to the next speaker, I think there are 7 minutes left for the meeting. What you need to do is to just log on through the same link, and we will just, continue as seamlessly as possible. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Shongita?
I just wanted to add that I think, that's a very typical kind of style of Reema Das, I think, that, I think she celebrates the creative activity. So everything else comes, as some kind of a prop, like, it's like complementary. And that's particularly what it's a joy of filmmaking that comes through so much in that. And that's so women's work. For me, it's almost like, when we cook, certain things make us feel so happy. All of us like to cook, creating any stereotype, but those of us who like cooking or knitting or doing something, these are very dull daily kind of stuff, but there is some kind of celebration of things that we enjoy, which is beyond our routine or beyond our expectation. And I see that kind of celebratory mode in Reema Das's making, even the earlier film, the Village Rockstar. So that's so amazing. That's what, whenever she makes something, I'm so interested in seeing. It's almost like raw life. She's not creating any specific aesthetics for so-called elite scholars. And the joy of making films, that is so beautiful, pristine. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anyone? One would like to say something? Nikhila, would you like to say something? Okay, Nikhila. I think you'll have to unmute your mic, Nikhila. We can't hear you. You're not audible. Nikhila is not audible.
I think there is a microphone problem there.
Yeah. It has, but I don't know, we're not able. Okay, while she is trying to sort that out, would anyone else like to say something? Okay, yeah, I think, yeah, Praveena?
Yeah, so I can just, so I was very, what I loved also was at the end when the men were gathering around moralizing about love and lust and, the idea that women should not know love and lust before marriage, you know, towards the end when the scandal has already been uncovered. It's wonderful that the one thing I noticed is when the women were discussing it, as they were cooking, they said some things in complete contradiction to what the men had said, the older men had said. The older men had come through with the father included, had come through with a great deal of censure on Bulbul's actions, whereas the women who were cooking were saying, what do we have to do with all of this? We have to keep working. Too, they said, boys and girls, so what? And this is life, and so on and so forth. So I thought that difference between the wives, the older women, commenting on what Bulbul had done versus practical teachers. They have to keep their houses running and they have to nurture, you know, as Sangeeta was basically saying, I think, mentioning, is the celebrate togetherness. And so they're not treating men were. I just thought I'd throw that in while we were waiting.
Ma'am, I would like to go next.
Yeah, who's that?
Ma'am, this is Compy.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Go ahead.
Yes,
yes, Compy.
Yeah, ma'am, as an insider of the region Northeast, I would like the audiences to know that our movies are not very violent outwardly. We always have a very subtle message to give. And although it's not outwardly understandable to the audiences that this movie has a particular message to give, but the director was very satirical when she was dealing with the patriarchal system. Because although she's not making the women, be the rebel cause, but she's making them speak very important lines in the story, which the male figures are not doing. For example, in Bulbul Can Sing, the entire plot is revolted around how the youngsters are they are not very curious to go and have, to explore sexually, but they are trying to get into the domain of what, young love feels like. And it's very, I mean, nobody has spoken about this so far, but the character of Suman, who, I mean, in today's time, we know that we can appreciate the presence of a gay person. We don't even know whether he's a gay or not. But the assumption that because he is very effeminate, creates a lot of, disturbance for him in day-to-day life, and he's subjected to so much of abuse, verbal abuse, and this can lead a person towards mental trauma as well. And Bulbul is always there to protect him. So I think we should focus on this narrative as well. And in the other movie as well, Village Rockstar, she doesn't go very deep into this theme, but a very slight hint is there of touching how the older women try to put the girl within the limits of what in Assamese is called as Khalinota. Khalinota means modesty. Stay within the limits of what a woman should be, modest in the long run. You should not spread your legs and sit on the trees. Like, don't jump into that. Jump into the trees or roam around. And she is rebuked again and again. And also there was one place where the mother rents out to another lady that, you see, I do not have a husband anymore. I'm taking care of the entire house, and they're coming and thrashing my daughter. Who are they to do it? Then the mother says that I'm taking care of everything else. Who are they to question how am I bringing up my daughter? So in terms of young children, young girls especially, so the older ladies or aunties in the neighborhood make it a point to or else moral police the young girls. And there's one scene in Bulbul Can Sing where they're cleaning the inside roof of the house, and the mother scolds the daughter saying that you should not rise too high. Your frock is getting shorter. So try not to bend so much, or do not try to reach the higher spots. There are aunties outside, they would be noticing you. So the presence of the outside gaze of women as part of the participants of patriarchal system is very strong in the society. And I guess this is a message that can be understood when we minutely try to get inside the social system. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. And yeah, I did a little bit of reading of Rima Das direction when she was starting to get popular. I was curious to know who she is. So I got to read that for Village Rockstar, she did not take help of any crew member to make the movie. She just had a handycam, just one, a very expensive one. And then she visited these places when the season of flood was around. So these shots are real. These are not made of props at all. So probably the flood that happened was in real time. And the characters suffered as well in real time. And because she did not have enough money, so she did not get in actors and professional ones for the movie. She picked the locals as well. So that is where the rawness or the genuineness of the experience can be traced, according to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, as far as I heard that, that Village Rockstar film, when it was being made, I think other than Rima Das herself, there was only another person who helped her, her cousin. One of her cousins, I think, in some way, either carrying stuff and, everything was done by herself. And it's, I mean, this is amazing, isn't it? This is so amazing, the way the material that we see, and you can, as if, smell the, I mean, I lived for a very long time in North Bengal, like for 7.5 years. So in Kuch Bihar. And I have, some of yours, and that's why, I mean, I think that there is something which is so intricate about these films. They represent the spirit of the place, it's in a way they embody the space that she's absolutely.
I forgot to mention about another important aspect that was made part of Village Rockstar. That is the scene of a puberty ceremony. Now, puberty ceremony is like the gateway for women to stop being more of a vagabond. Like, you should start being modest from now onwards. So I think we should take this aspect as well in our discussion.
Nikhila, is your mic okay now? Would you like to say something?
I hope you can hear me. Am I audible?
Yeah, now you are.
Okay. Thanks, Pompey. Thanks, Jyotirmoy, for those very interesting and insider views of the film. For me, one of the most striking aspects of both the films, of course, as all of you have pointed out, it has been the use of non-actors in the film. And also the kind of interesting camera angles that she uses, which was very, very interesting, not foregrounding any one particular person or individual, particularly in Bulbul Can Sing. But even more interesting for me in both the films, Bulbul Can Sing, and after that I watched Village Rockstars just a couple of days ago. The striking aspect was, I think this is one of the few films that kind of show us the amount of work that children do in households. It was striking. I couldn't think of another film which kind of shows us the everydayness of the labor that children are part of. Whether it is going to collect wood in the forest or helping around climbing trees as in Village Rockstar. So, which is also, I mean, it's labor, but it's also part of play. It's also part of social learning. It's so many different things at the same time. So I thought it was very, very interesting where, I think Jyotirmoy mentioned this, a lot of Iranian films and Middle Eastern films give us this sense of children who are doing many adult things. And that I thought was one of the most striking aspects to me about this film. Yeah.
And the friendship, I thought, was just phenomenal between these three players. I mean, through the labor and through the play, the most attractive, or the theme for me of the film was this, to see moment by moment how they tease each other, protect each other. Even the Suman, or whoever he is, right? In the beginning, he starts to frighten Bulbul by saying, if you leave your hair open, the ghost will come, the ghost of somebody who died, who left her hair open, etc. But so there is, to me, to work out all those moments and to make it hang together so well that after the conflict, complete bonding was very moving, I suppose. Is the main friendship, was lovely to watch it moment by moment progress through different, through love interactions, through, whatever. And then finally the suicide, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I speak?
Yeah, please, Rashmi, go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing that I noticed the most in the film was the centrality of school in unfolding of the entire tragedy towards the end, where Bonnie commits suicide. For me, that particular space was very important. If not for the school, I don't think Bonnie would have committed suicide. The initial violence of those groups of boys, mostly the right-wing, the so-called protectors of the modesty of women and all that. So, but then, I mean, those children could have survived that if the school had not rusticated those kids. And I felt, I mean, coming from a rural teaching institution, what I see is, how these educational spaces arrogate onto themselves this authority, which can be disastrous in people's lives. And I see this happening every day when teachers take it upon themselves to be the guardians of morality of the society, and what it does to the lives of people. So within the institution that I work, there are these CCTV cameras within classrooms. So this is an undergrad space, and when students are, it's very common to find couples there. And if they are indulging in any activity, the amount of shaming that happens in these spaces is something that caught my attention, not only as a spectator of this film, but also as a person teaching in this space and kind of witnessing this violence in a way that is very, troublesome, but then also as a helpless spectator, even as part of the authority, and you really can't do anything there. So that dynamic is something. So the whole tragedy could have been less severe if not for that school. That's what I feel. Yeah.
But Rashmi, I have a question for you. Yeah. So do you think that the film director, though, was through Bulbul basically doesn't accept at some level that shaming towards the end, though she takes the consequences in the loss of the friend, etc. There's a part of her you see that has gone beyond this to her own. She starts to sing with the umbrella and stares out at the space very philosophically, at the ocean, etc. So you feel that she's reaching some epiphany or maturity in terms of assimilating the criticism and moving on towards the end. So I think that there was a critique, or if you like, a comment made by the director indirectly through these very close-up shots that we got of Bulbul all the time, right? In pain or her face. So I think it was also being rejected. Do you think that, Rashmi?
Yeah, definitely. But I was thinking more from the angle of all the four characters which are part of this society, not just Bulbul. And what I thought was, Bulbul may have resisted, so that particular attempt to shame her may not have been fully successful. But we also have to notice that she gives up the friendship with her, that poet friend, okay? And that's a very sad thing, you know, for the way these couples are separated, for example. You know, it's like shame them, and so she doesn't go back to him, not even, you know, I mean, that requires risk taking. And she also tells Sumi at one point that my life's ruined because of you. I mean, I asked you to stand guard and you disappeared, and you kind of left us all by ourselves, and you didn't really do your job, and that's why I don't want to be friends with you, even though she kind of comes back later on. But we notice that, you know, she is within that society which has attempted to kind of ostracize her for not a, it's not a fault really. I mean, what were they doing? It's almost like, you know, for she understands that she has not committed anything wrong, but then she also understands the societal framework within which she is functioning, and then you know, how it has shamed her, and how, you know, she herself expresses that at several points in the movie. And I feel, you know, it's like, yeah, there is resistance in Bulbul's character. It's like she doesn't go and think that her life's completely over, but then she also understands that her options now are very, very limited. So she can't go back to school, she can't be with her friends. So for an adolescent of that age, it's a significant, it's a very significant loss, I feel.
Anyone else?
Can I just chip in?
Yes, Jyotirmoy.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to make some small points here. One is, of course, Poppy has mentioned about the character of Sumi, that suspected transgender, which is very significant in terms of Assamese cinema, that very few cinemas have made this kind of a character as one of the central figures, which of course Remadas has done in a very subtle way. And one aspect is, of course, there is you might have noticed during the school function, they were they were supposed to make a performance of Jikir. Jikir is a kind of Islamic devotional song in Assam. But significantly, these songs in that particular schools are being sung by the Hindu girls. And where the teacher, while she is instructing, she would say that while singing Jikir, you are supposed to cover your whole head. You are not supposed to show your hair. So that particular aspect shows how the insidious kind of protocol is there to control the women body in any kind of space, be it a cultural sort of association, be it a kind of institutional kind of a setup, as school, as one of you said. So that she has very subtly brought in that particular aspect, how every stages of one's you can say manifestations, there is some amount of regulations is there, even when it comes to making a kind of performance. So that is because that is everybody is happy, but there is some they have to cover your whole and go. That particular contrast she has brought in. Another aspect is that she has done quite nicely, I would say. The poverty as such has not been given a kind of an eminence here. It is very subtly laid out kind of representation, and which does not have.
I think there's a problem with Jyotirmoy's connection. He's just suddenly gone off. Jyotirmoy, are you? Yeah. Is there someone else who would like to speak?
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, Bhagyalakshmi, please go ahead.
The movie raises questions on the social problems like moral policing, suicide, and all, and institutions like schools and all. And another thing is, one thing is that Suman is being taught to be a boy and tells us that gender is a social construction. And even in the beginning of the movie, we can see how they tell Bulbul not to spread her hair and all, because these all things we can see how it is happening there, and also how male members are teaching morality and all. And society's attitude is there. If the women or girls are beautiful, they should act. And Bulbul is not supposed to sing. Bulbul can act. This is what the man says there. And also, the movie seems to deconstruct the notions of spiritual love, which is a part of the mainstream movie. Because the mother says that she did not understand the language of the males, the spiritual love, Radha Krishna and all. And naturally, you will express your love by kissing a baby and all. Like that they say in between. And again, usually women are portrayed as the perpetuators of patriarchy. But here she's a very different character, because certain the beauty of the nature, everything is enjoyed by Bulbul. And in the end also, we can see that mother saying her to follow her heart. So a rainbow comes to her after a long time. So it may not show that the lovers are being parted there, because Bulbul movie seems to be open-ended in a manner. So it is a kind of positive note. Bulbul may go back to her lover. So she may be able to follow her heart. And the kind of woman-woman bonding is also there to help her.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Ma'am, can I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, agreeing with, and thanks for Jyotirmoy and Pompey for giving the background of northeastern filmmaking. That's enlightening, because in India it's so varied a geography. Filmmaking should also follow that geography, and we may misunderstand something. You give us a lot of information about ethnographic details of what is portrayed in the formalist framework of film. Otherwise, we will think something. Being in Karnataka, staying here, I may misunderstand certain frames, but you have provided a lot of background for that. Thank you. But the one aspect of Rima Das's films, specifically her visual essaying, both her last film, Village Rockstar, and this film, cherishes that particular style of filmmaking which Mani Kaul and Kumar Shani did initiate into Indian film. That visuals should speak. That means your vibhava, that means what you want to express should be conveyed to the audience through the visuals and sound. That Bhima Das is following meticulously that particular style of filmmaking, especially more led back in Village Rockstars, and a little contrived with the social issues in Bulbul Can Sing. But even in Bulbul Can Sing, she is having frames which are visually enchanting, visual essays where a whole set of emotions of a young girl can be expressed through the visual framework. That style of filmmaking is going very rare in India. Once upon a time, Janu Barua used to do that, but he left it and went to Bollywood. That kind of filmmaking, and in fact, certain scenes in Village Rockstar and Bulbul Can Sing brings back to memory the Satyajit Ray's frame of, say, Charulata, where swing expresses the mood. So the kind of filmmaking Rima Das is carrying, that is one heartening thing what Rima Das gives us to the audience all through India. But compared to her last film, Village Rockstars, which was a very laid back film, which was very slow kind of moving film, which slowly engulfs you in its emotions through its visual style. Here, I think she got a little ambitious, where she packs it with social issues, where it becomes a little contrived. I'm not sure, because it becomes a little contrived that Yeah, I agree with Pompey and even Rashmi told that that kind of a thing, that kind of moral policing. I don't know. In Karnataka, it may be different. In Assam, it may be different. But there is a kind of a visually representing them in a kind of a film. What she wants to say. I think she got too much ambitious. That coming of the age film and packing it with social issues. I feel the script is little contrived when compared to our Village Raksa, which is led back of coming of a age film. This is a visual essay. But anyway, I'll thank Rima Das for continuing the style of filmmaking where you express through visuals. Some of her frames are so beautiful that, I mean, not beautiful, I mean, so expressive that through visuals you express your emotions to convey to the audience. That's enlightening, and she keeps the tradition of filmmaking. Thank you for her.
Okay. Thank you, Kaniraj. Would anyone else like to say something?
I would like to add a little more about moral policing aspect. I think choosing teenagers for teenagers' character as the central figures is important to show how corporal punishment in schools can leave a long-lasting impact in a child's memory and mind as well. And I can speak from my own personal experience also, like how we had a particular maths teacher. Somehow maths teachers are always like the the one who always measures the yardstick of whether you are a good student or not, or whether you are within the limits of the culture or not. Anyways, so he used to always monitor whether our hair are in length or not, whether you're cutting your hair frequently. If you're cutting your hair frequently, that means you are getting more into being a stylish person. So that means your attention is moving away from your books or your studies. And just to be the same for the guys as well. So we had in Village Rockstar, our character's brother, I think his name was Manavendra. He was being scolded by the teacher for having long hair and not scoring good marks. And then in the other movie, the other metaphor that we should look into is that river is a very important metaphor in Assamese movies. River and the very long length of a girl's hair, because when the aspect of that a ghost might be lingering around and she might catch you if you leave your hair open, can have reference to, say, folk tales where the pretty women are said to be possessed, or the demon or a deity can come and possess, spirits can come and possess them, and then pretty women can also become go and seduce good-looking man, or man who can get captivated by their beauty. And likewise, so they're just objects of beauty alone. And it's interesting that the English teacher was frequently trying to pass on certain advances towards her, and maybe that was also one reason why she becomes very conscious. And I feel that Bulbul is a very repressed character. She cannot be herself at all. She cannot sing in public. That is something we should remember. And also her beauty, her looks are always reprimanded, because that makes her the object of people's attention, and maybe that is something she doesn't want. That was my slight viewpoint.
Can I ask Pompey one question? Pompey, I mean,
yes,
very interesting to say.
Yes,
Pompey,
sir.
I mean, I felt something's contrived. I mean, if you know Karnataka, you know how Karnataka looks at Northeast.
I don't have much idea, although I had few Kannadiga friends.
There's kind of otherness. But the way, I mean, I felt that this script is contrived in the sense that she packs many things into it. Coming of the age and these social issues, where these social issues get sidelined. I mean, in a sense that some visuals are there, but they get sidelined. That doesn't get an essayist look as the coming of the age feeling, that Bulbul feeling her aloneness in that vast background. The kind of visual essay is not being encapsulated in the frames where this moral issues goes on. And I want to ask you that, because I'm very particular about this, because these moral policing issues are even geographical. I mean, in the sense that way they do it in Karnataka and way they do it elsewhere. So I want to
Yeah.
know what are your views about that.
I wouldn't have much idea about how it is in Karnataka, but say in Assam. I mean, I'm a tribal girl. I did not have 100% of the subjugation or moral policing that happens with people from Assamese speaking community. That is slightly different. But this is common that women after a certain age, I mean, although the practice of marrying of women soon has been stopped, but then there's certain aspect of monitoring women to groom for the longer run, to make her a modest, decent woman is always there in the backdrop. And for me, the frames of Meera Das is not just to showcase the scenic beauty of the landscape of Northeast, but also to show the everydayness, the mundaneness of a repeated, day, like a new day starts and a day ends again. And it's a new day again. I mean, she goes out in the open. Maybe that day she's trying to find herself, try to listen to her own voice, where she's away from all the cacophony of everybody's viewpoints and advices or reprimands about herself. So I feel nature is both a mute spectator as well as adds on to the mood of the movie. In Village Rockstar, the nature played a spoilsport in a way, and as flood coming and destroying, and it also pushed back our characters desire to own a guitar sooner than when she expected. The mother wanted to gift it within a month's time, but probably it took some 3-4 months time to get her the guitar. I'm not sure if I could answer you properly.
If I may.
Yeah, Rashmi, are you want to come in?
Yeah. If I may add to both Pompey's points and Pani Raj's thing, I mean, the coming of age narrative that Pani Raj is pointing out, I don't think it runs counter to the narrative of the social issue that's woven into the film, because these are formative experiences. If they're coming out of their innocent view of the world as this beautiful place, and they're kind of opening their eyes in the classroom to a teacher who makes advances towards students, or the moral policing that is happening within the school, or so these are all formative experiences which goes into the making of these characters. I feel it's not something that it's not a very picturesque narrative that is there, and it's something that, I mean, we all have our moments of violence growing up, and we all have those moments of disillusionment with the whole idea of what the world is about. And I mean, even those spaces where we were supposed to feel very safe and secure, and those were not really the spaces that were either accepting or welcoming. So I felt, it's like these are, I mean, it's very important at that age to kind of think about this as a formative influence of even in that coming of age narrative. So the experiences that they have, the social issues, so they need not run counter to each other as much as one contributing to the other. Yeah.
Rashmi, my question is it cinematically gels with her emotions? That's what I'm asking. I mean, I'm much talking about, with all concerns for social issues. What I'm saying is the cinematic fabulous expression of that. That's all.
But, Funny Raj, to your point, I kind of I'm with you most of the time, but I think that dialectic was needed. She has to come of age, which means accept the limitations of society and be a solo person, which is what happens at the end. And the way cinematically that is established is by complete close-ups of her face. There's no dialogue. There's nothing in which narratively she's going to do, which is, she's going to be in the village. We know all that. And she's going to be repressed also. But coming to terms with herself is what is established visually. Without that, what you're saying is excessive narrative, social institutions or contrived. She needed something by which the character has to test itself. And Bulbul, more than Bunny, stands out precisely because it's visually in her face. The pain, the non-acceptance, and it's all done visually by her the close-up shots, which I thought were so powerful at the end in particular, that that's the epiphany, the realization that I'm on my own. I'm not going to have any, this friendship, etc. There's something about it that's surface, and she's probing in depth, and that's the moment when I think she goes from innocence to maturity visually.
Yes, what Prodhani has said, yes. What I just got disconnected. I'm again back here. Yes, Prodhani was telling about that this particular film, Rima Das has been a little too ambitious to bring in so many elements, and she's trying to address so many issues. But what I would say, the most powerful aspect of this film is that the resistance of the film. There are issues, but she has not been vocal about any one of that. And that is the beauty of this particular film. And also you have to understand through whom the whole narration is progressing. It is progressing from a young girl who is not a very socially conscious kind of an individual yet. For her, this is a kind of first-hand experience in a kind of a setup which is essentially rural. And in fact, when I was watching this particular film, I could also identify myself with the kind of setup, the kind of school, exactly this kind of school even I had been to, with this kind of broken windows and all kind of stuff. And exactly this kind of crisis some of us had during that period in time, which we might not have been able to analyze in a very sophisticated manner, which now perhaps we can do. And the strength of the film is that through Bulbul, she's presenting these particular issues in a very subtle manner, the way an individual would really react to or respond to this particular, you can say, eventualities. One is, of course, that particular scene, that moral policing. This is true what Pompey is telling me, because in the Northeast, this is essential for the tribal youngsters to meet boys and girls. Otherwise, they would not be able to marry as such. So that is the institution. You have to meet, you have to know each other, and you get married. But then again, within the Northeast in Assam itself, we have different kind of value system. It's a very moralistic kind of impositions are happening from the 80s onward in Assamese society. So that particular aspect has also been shown how it becomes very repressive, even for a youngster to grow. That aspect has been shown. And the very first scene, which Prakriyas has brought in quite significantly, this analogy between Charulata and bulbuls swinging down the tree. And there, when that Sumo was telling that you should not spread out your hair, you should keep your hair open. If you do that, then one spirit would come, that is said. But one interesting folklore legend in rural Assam is that there's a notion of Jokhini. Jokhini is a kind of a women evil spirit. She's like a ghost. And Jokhini is normally seen from the back, and she's always keeping her hair open. So a woman who is keeping her hair open is normally associated with this idea of Jokhini. Jokhini means basically a female evil spirit. So now right in the beginning, she brings in this particular imaginary character, which is very much ingrained within the Assamese consciousness, that if you open your hair, if you are too liberated, then you are basically an evil spirit. And second aspect is that, which perhaps you might have also noticed, the title itself, Bulbul Can Sing. The title gives a kind of an anxiety, because bulbul is a very common bird, common passerine bird that can actually sing. It's a very common bird in Assamese landscape. But when this particular title you encounter, Bulbul Can Sing, then immediately encounter also a possibility, perhaps bulbuls have become silent. And that last aspect of the film, when she is having a kind of intimate association with mother, and there she gains a kind of a possible strength for redemption, and she walks alone. Perhaps once she grows up, she might be able to look at the whole thing in a more, you can say, intellectually critical manner to combat what she had been suffering so far. I think that is the biggest strength of this particular film. yes, she has been certain issues, a lot of issues she has brought in. Another aspect is that, like caste equations, like for example, raising piggery is nothing to do with your caste identity as such. It's entirely kind of an economic decision. That particular aspect also she has brought in very beautifully. And of course, what I see, I do not see any kind of overt statement being made. And that is the strength of this particular film. Had Bulbul been accepted his lover, had Bulbul been openly rebellious, the film would have fallen flat. It might have become very normal kind of melodramatic sort of a film that we normally expect, that a protagonist is now rising. That kind of thing doesn't happen. And that's the power of this particular film. That's what I wanted to say.
I would actually disagree with Sir here, because I think a similar accusation has been made against another very highly looked forward to Northeastern movie called Akhuni. Like because they haven't taken strong stance in terms of characterization, the movie has disappointed, and that was just like one chance for representation for us, where the representation did not happen in the right place. I feel like if the character was slightly more rebellious, but I guess Rima wasn't really looking to create a character like that, because more than Bulbul, it was Bonnie who was more outspoken, according to me, and Bonnie was killed. The Bonnie's character was killed there, but yes. Bulbul, she remained.
Exactly.
Just a minute.
There had been like
one minute, Jyotirmoy. I'm sorry to interrupt. Nikhila, are we going to continue? Because we just have about 2 minutes left, or are we winding up the session?
No, we can continue. We have another slot. I have scheduled another slot. We can continue.
Okay. So when this ends, like before, we just go back to the same link and come in?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Jyotirmoy, please continue.
Yeah, better we go back to link, and because we are having 1 minute, we can go back and continue.
Okay. Are you saying that we exit from here? And what did you say, Paniraj? I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
No, that ends there, and then we'll get back into discussion. Otherwise, 1 minute somebody says we'll not be hearing.
Okay. So we complete this, right? And then we
now it's almost, it will be over, and it will get over, and we'll get on with the next session.
Okay. Jyotirmoy, I'm sorry to have interrupted you. Please go on.
So yeah, the Jyotirmoy can talk once the session starts, because the discuss now is less than 1 minute.
No, that is what I wanted to say. I was on only because I happened to have discussed one particular film called Musafi by Abbas Kiratsami, where in that particular film, one young boy, he wanted to watch one football match. And the entire movie is about that. He wanted to watch one football match. And he finally makes it to the stadium to watch. He's a very poor boy. Somehow he manages a ticket, finally comes to watch the particular football match. He is right in front of the stadium, fully crowded, and then he falls asleep. And when he gets up, then the match was over. So this particular boy been able to watch that.
I was wondering if this also occurred to other people. I mean, I thought community was much more welcoming of the mingling of these kids than the school and the space that they went seeking privacy. For example, Sumi was welcome in all households, and there was never any undertone or hint of these kids being up to something whenever they were playing, or so this is something that I wanted to know, especially from Pompey and Jyotirmoy. The community, I mean, the way mothers treated Sumi, for example, it doesn't look like it's a very gender segregated community. It's very welcoming of these friendships, and they accept it, but it's only in the spaces of school, for example. Even school, it's only in the presence of the authority that this gets something, I mean, it becomes something else. Otherwise, it's a community where people are, even with Bonnie's mother, the way she kind of feeds these kids when they're up to something. I was wondering if it occurred to you as well. It's or something. No, it's like there is this paradox within the film where the community is much more accepting of these friendships and what they're up to, and without an undertone or hint of something that, okay, these kids are indulging in something that they shouldn't be indulging in. So that's a question especially to Jyotirmoy and Pompey.
And do you mean that Boni and Bulbul are from different communities? That I want to get enlightened on that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually found it slightly interesting that Bonnie, the artist who portrayed Bonnie, seemed to be from a tribal community, whereas Bonnie's mother had features of an Assamese person. So we do not know if Bonnie's father was from a tribal community. We do not know that. And in the very beginning of the movie, I mean, I thank Tarakisha sir for pointing out that question to me. In the beginning of Village Rockstar, there is a scene of music concert going on. They're actually not singing Assamese song. They were singing songs from a different community called Missing. Missing is again very important community from Lower Assam itself, where movies are being both the movies are being set, and some of the words from this dialect actually had similarity with what we speak in my mother tongue Bodo as well. So yeah, I would like to respond to Rashmi that yes, it is true. Both the genders are not segregated in terms of friendship. But say when it comes to romantic relationship, there is an apprehension from the school authorities. I mean, that segregation might start from say 6th or 7th standard onwards. I remember that in my school at 7th standard, this is like almost 15 years back, I think. I haven't kept account. Making boys and girls sit, alternately was meant to be a punishment. I mean, you are made to feel ashamed that you are made to sit beside a boy when you were just say 11 or 12 years old, and you don't really comprehend that this is supposed to be a punishment at that age.
And to both Pompey and Jyotirmoy, Sarigamapa, is it, I mean, is kind of a music in Assam? It is from Karnataka music. Sarigamapa, I mean, is it an imposition? I mean, because that
No. This is, come on, this is, the music part you are telling?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. This is a common kind of musical lessons youngsters learn. This is a kind of Hindustani classical music, Saregamapa, very common thing. And mostly the Assamese students would learn Borgit. Borgit is a kind of devotional books, which are 500 years old, which are actually scaled in the kind of classical raga songs. So the music aspect is quite strong in Assamese society. When it comes to the classical music, the notations are the same.
Basically, from Carnatic Sangeet, it's not much in Hindustani. Hindustani tonality is different. But this Sarigamapa, following that rhythm, is much from Carnatic music. Is it a overwhelming influence of Hindutva there in Assam, or is it a part of the Assam?
Nothing to, no, this is interpretation. No, see, when I also learned music, when Hindutva thing was not there at all in the scene, I learned this. I had to learn Rag Iman, I had to learn Rag Bhairavi. This is basically, and most of the people who sing, who are trained in classical music, they follow the Gharana, this Lucknow Gharana, because most of the institutions are associated with this Bhat Khande Lucknow. And also, they also sing a lot of, that is Bongyo Sahitya, that is Bongyo, this is also based on classical music. So these are the institutional things. And when it comes to singing any traditional, not the folk ones is different, but traditional Assamese song, you have to base it on a kind of a raga. And that raga, you have to begin with Saregama, Do Re Mi. That's a common thing. I think there is a commonality between most of these Indian classical music gharanas. So there is, Assam is not an exception in that. And there's nothing to do with Hindutva aspect here at all.
Because, I mean,
I agree with you.
A lot of interventions are going on. I mean, TM Krishna is talking about this, etc. That's why, yes, I was interested because I'm not sure about Assamese music and all.
Yeah. Even in Bengal, when we
Assamese music has two.
we also learned it Saregama Pa Dha Ni Sa. You know that the same thing. Yeah, I mean.
Rabindra Sangit যখন শিখবেন তখন তো এটা শিখতে লাগবে সারেগামা।
Yeah, of course. Rabindra Sangit. Yeah, when you sing or even classical.
Based on the saregama.
Yeah.
Any classical music for that matter.
Yeah.
Any modern music, of course.
Yeah.
Actually, what happens in Assam, folk music is very strong, so it may not have that kind of a regime to go through saregama pa when it comes to folk music. But whenever it comes to any folk music, such you need to go through saregama pa. That is a very common, very old kind of a thing, which has been there for a very, very long time, from 500 years ago, at least. That is when the Borgits started in Assam.
Just interested because to break that monotony of 7 notes, Ilayaraja is making 3-note song to break that monotony. That just interested in use of music in film.
Yes. Some aspects, yeah, we might have noticed some of those aspects. But his Hindutva element has brought in here that particular as a thing when they were speaking about that Moral Policing Act. Yeah. That is a very rightist. That's happening in a very strong way these days. And that aspect she has brought in that particular film. That is there. Yes.
Anyone else would like to speak? I think we have Tarkeshwar. Would you like to say something?
Rather than saying, I just wanted to react to what Rashmi said about whether the village was more receptive than the school. I don't think so, because in terms of the gendering process, there is a gendering that is happening in the village, at home, in the family, as well as in the school. But the aftermath, the way it has been handled at the village level and at the school are two different things. So in that sense, at the village level, they have handled it in a more better way than at the school. But in terms of gendering, I don't think we can say that the village is more progressive than the school. The another aspect about what I noticed was I forgot. I will come back to it later. If time permits.
Okay.
Yes, what Tarakasha was speaking about, just quickly, I'll just respond to that about the school. One paradox in the school is that when there was a small meeting of the teachers happening about what to do with the students, then one old male teacher who would be saying that these are the normal thing happens at this age among the youngsters. But interesting, this is the female principal, the woman principal, who is more concerned about the social propriety or the prestige of the school. That is the contrast actually, and that is the irony brought in the school setup. When we might have expected that being a female, being a woman, the principal might have been more forthcoming to have more kind of liberal views about this, but it doesn't happen with her, but rather with an old teacher. And in the social structure, what earlier one of you have said, one village elder would be speaking about how women should be more moralistic when it comes to love. Love is always platonic. That is the otindriyo, beyond your body, love is. And that is the kind of love happiness rather than Krishna, and everybody should follow that. So this is the kind of contrast very subtly brought in order to break the stereotyping. We cannot assign only one particular gender, one particular individual to be the representative of some kind of, you can say, radical moral views or radical ethical views as such. It could be a woman, it could be a man as such.
Jyotirmoy, can I intervene?
It was also...
Sorry. Somebody is speaking. Rashmi?
Yes.
It was also very surprising to me that, the punishment was borne by 2 girls and the boys went back to school. So there was no, punishment for this. I remember, when I was going through that, because the Bonnie's friend who was also interested in Bonnie, he kind of is very tearful, and then he walks all by himself on a promenade sort of a way, and we notice that these boys are going back to school because they're in their uniforms after rustication happened and girls are taken out of school. So this is what we notice. It's the women characters who bear the brunt of this whole issue, and then they are the ones who are burdened with the punishment, and the boys are let off. And so why this struck me was we were given a case study in one of the teacher training programs, which happens for all the early career in-service employees. And the case was something like this. It's like a boy and a girl fall in love, and then they do something inappropriate, socially inappropriate. I'll put it in quotes. And then the teacher has to take the decision, in the school. And you also have to notice that you are in a community, village community, where the social codes around what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in such scenario are very strongly laid out. And then this is disapproved of. So the principal now has the option of removing either the boy or the girl, and who should be removed from the school was the case study given to us in one of the training programs, this 21-day long, 28-day long training programs that early service people attend. So it was very interesting to me that, it's like as teachers, as we were asked to sit in judgment over lives and futures of such students, which I thought was not okay. It's like what morale, what kind of authority do teachers have to sit in judgment over these things and say that, okay, one should bear the punishment, the other should be let off? And why? We were asked to also in that case justify why, if we are going to give a chance to girl, why? And if we are going to retain the boy, why? Okay, so it's like it was a funny case study. It's like I was questioning the whole thing of like, why do you want to even remove either of them? So it's that kind of a moral quandary where even the authority is implicated and asked to take a stance and a judgment. So this something similar plays out in this particular film, and that was for me very intriguing.
That the idea, of course, is Shanta Chakot Chalua Hai. It's what Vijay Tendulkar says. The Kashmir's narrative reminds me of Shanta Chakot Chalua Hai. But in any case, I want to ask Jyotirmoy, is this, like, say, a modern education, going to modern schools is a liberating experience all over India, especially for the feminine gender, that go mingle with caste, gender and religion and get liberated. And more in Karnataka, they are being restricted after post-Hindutva, they have been restricted in this liberalism. Is it the case with Assam? Assam was continuing with kind of general trend in India where liberal education, whatever may be the connotation, modern education, it was liberating. Is it constraining now, and is it a post-Hindutva phenomena, or you look at it in a different way?
Actually, what happens? Yes. Can I? Yeah. No. See, post-Hindutva atmosphere in general, there has been an impact all over. It is there. But when it comes to school, this particular school, if we look at this particular school, we shall see that this is a kind of a school where we have students coming across social or caste boundaries. We have tribal and non-tribal students here, and Bonnie, the name itself suggested that she might have had some kind of Christian background, and then secondly. Also, this is the kind of school where students are performing jikir. Jikir is a kind of Islamic devotional song by the students who are not Muslim as such. Then again, we can see the performance of a Bodo dance, that a Bagrumba dance is there. And it is also evident that all the dancers who are dancing that particular dance, not all of them are Bodo girls as such. So this is a kind of cultural sort of a heritage. Everybody is participating in that particular thing. And also there are Bihu songs, Bihu preparations for Bihu, which is a folk dance. And also there are dances of Krishna. So you can see this is the conglomeration of communities are happening when none of these students are aware of their religious, ethnic, or caste identities. And this is a kind of a situation which is largely there, still there in rural Assam, in the kind of school setup that we have been to. Also, we run one particular school. In that school also, this is people coming from all across. And one more important thing is not there. There is the notion of low caste as such. Like for example, much later I came to know that we have a railway station. In the railway station, there's the cleaning community. There's a particular community who used to have a particular kind of surname. Like Ravidas is one of the surname who belonged to Chamar community. But we would come to know about that particular caste identity much later, not when we're students together. Or Rajbhar is another kind of a community. So there has always been a kind of very easy mingling in easy social as well as social setup as well as domestic setup. There's a kind of easy coming and going of the communities of the individuals coming from across communities. So that particular aspect is still there. The post-Hindutva kind of segregation has not happened yet in a very big way, but hideously in other kind of dimensions, it is definitely coming. Yes.
This kind of moral policing issues, I mean, is it post? I mean, because in Karnataka,
no, this is not a post-Hindutva.
Not very distinct, but post-Hindutva, this kind of things are coming up. That's why I'm asking that.
No, this moral policing, this particular act, when it was happening, of course, then this Hindutva thing did not come to my mind, or this kind of, a very BJP kind of thing did not come to my mind. What came to my mind was ASU movement and ULFA. ASU was the kind of movement when in the 80s it happened, the mid 80s, ASU movement, which is quite famous, and it was followed by ULFA insurgency. During the ULFA time, what used to happen, supposing if you drink, that you would be brought in the village market and you'd be made to sit there for the whole day holding your ears. And they would look for this kind of scandals in the villages and they will give punishment. And this kind of moral policing thing happened with the rise of insurgency in Assam in a very big way. Not after the Hindutva thing, it happened earlier. So insurgency or the militancy in Assam has brought in some kind of very repressive social orders in Assam. That was very much there. And these particular boys, they were following the kind of things they were saying. These are very newspaper kind of morality they were saying. And this newspaper is a very mainstream kind of a narrative, mainstream kind of discourse. And they are thinking then if they are doing that kind of a thing, they're doing a great service for cleansing of society. And this kind of moral authority comes from the kind of an attitude or temperament people have developed through their encounter with ASU and ULFA. That's the thing. Yeah.
But the ASU and ULFA kind of policing, did it target women or both the sexes?
They also targeted women, of course. They would be socially shaming them, and they would also be harassed in a different kind of manner. So women were also there, part of this. They are sort of in the loop. The man women should be morally very refined within their quote unquote, within their codes of moralities as such, and which is a very kind of very mainstream Brahminical kind of moralities of which they were propagating at that point in time.
I think what Fanira sir is trying to understand from us is how the Assamese society, so far away from mainland culture, still has a lot of Hinduistic practices. I think this must have started with the coming of Vaishnavism in Assam, which tried to bring in a lot of the. Yes, and I feel like they established a lot of moral and cultural codes as well, within which a lot of community and both the genders had to groom themselves or grow in the long run. For example, the cultural or religious or spiritual meet that happens in Bulbul Can Sing is actually a group of Vaishnavite men sitting together and singing Nam Kirtan or Nam Kokha. And women folk are not allowed to enter into the religious practices for the Vaishnavites. They are still excluded to enter. Maybe this is khatras, yeah. So maybe this is why women, in the eyes of the men, don't understand that spiritual love is more important than physical love. And women, they start by saying that we are fools. How are we supposed to know? And it's interesting that this conversation happens upon a handloom, weaving machine. Like in both the films Village Rockstar and in Bulbul Can Sing, women are talking about the children and their futures when they are weaving clothes. So women are supposed to restrict themselves to household work and leave men to go and pursue religious practices, and then maybe set the moral conduct that a society has to follow. Women do not have any role in it in deciding what they should be doing. Rather, they are being instructed that you should be following so and so codes, and then you have to adhere to it. And maybe that is how women in the long run, they acquired, and then they become the carriers of these patriarchal notions. Maybe that is why the female principal felt that it's best to expel the female child rather than the male, because in the long run, he will also be the bread earner for the family, to expel her. I mean, these were my few observations on this.
I just want to intervene here.
Yeah.
Yes, Tarkeshwar.
The other point that I wanted to make.
Okay. Tarkeshwar, some problem with your connection?
May I meanwhile, Geeta?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Yes, I think Pompey has brought in a very significant kind of a dimension to the whole discussion here, when she has pointed out how Neo-Vaishnavite movement that had happened in the 16th century, has brought in some kind of very mainstream Hindu values into the Assamese society. That is, of course, there. And one significant aspect of this Neo-Vaishnavite movement in Assam is that in the idea of God, Krishna is the central figure. So Krishna is the central, we have to be totally devoted to Krishna. But while we are worshipping Krishna, we're not supposed to worship Radha. In Assam's Vaishnavite notion of God, notion of divinity, Krishna is the central figure, but Radha is absent. Radha is not supposed to be there. And there was also a kind of, but he had always been against Shankardeva, who had actually reformed this particular, brought in this particular reforms. There were poets earlier to Shankardeva who would be giving a kind of very physical Radha in their poems while describing the beauty of Radha. They would be, and Shankardeva would disapprove of that kind of narration or that kind of description of a woman in kind of a literary texts. So that aspect is very much there, where there's a kind of somewhat a kind of you can say subjugation happens in a very subtle way through the emergence of Neo-Vaishnavite movement. That is there, but there is one dimension of it. But what I would personally would like to make my observation is that the whole notion of morality, the typical mainstream morality in Assamese society, has come in a very significant way in the late 19th century or the mid 19th century. When this Renaissance happened in Bengal. So Bengal Renaissance has a very significant role to play in the social order of Assam. Till that time, Assamese widows were never used to wear white saris. Once you become a widow, you're supposed to wear white sari as such. Till Renaissance influence, this notion of wearing a white sari for an Assamese widow was not there in Assamese society. It came through Renaissance exposure to Bengal Renaissance. Then, after her husband dies, a woman was actually free to either marry somebody or keep somebody, not necessarily to marry. And even after supposing a widow marries a different guy, she would still remain a kind of inheritor to the properties of her deceased husband. So that particular rule was also changed to the Dayavaga kind of a law or legality, which had come to Assam to the root of Bengal's Renaissance. So this is Bengal's Renaissance is a very significant moment, and that is Bengal Renaissance again was the time when Brahminical communities became very powerful socially. Earlier they were not socially. These are the mostly ethnic communities, like the Ahoms, way the ones who would be controlling society, the Kacharis controlling society, the Kochas controlling the society. So those are mostly the ethnic communities who were controlling the societies. So once the Renaissance came, then there's the rise of Brahminism also, or Brahminical values started in Assamese society. And from there on, supposing now if you become a widow after 19th century, then you are not supposed to even eat non-vegetarian food or meat as such. And then what happened, these are all the kind of notions or kind of practices which used to be followed by the high caste widows in Bengal. So now in order to gain some kind of social prestige, they would follow similar kind of social practices. So if I am a widow and I follow that kind of social practices, then I have a kind of elevated social identity. So this came through in a very significant way after 19th century in Assam. And it gained a kind of, in recent times, it gained a kind of very militant sort of a dimension during this particular period when, in the late 80s, when Asu movement and followed by Ulfa movement. Ulfa movement actually created havoc in terms of social or moral policing in the rural societies. And so many people were even killed for the simple reason that they would be suspecting him to be a kind of an adulteress, having a kind of relationship with this woman, or even or a man, or a drinker as such. These kind of things used to happen, and people used to, in a mainstream newspaper, used to eulogize them. They become instant heroes in society if you can really perpetrate that kind of punishment. And these young boys in this particular film, Bulbul Can Sing, they wanted to gain that kind of social status by beating up these boys.
Shall I now?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please go on.
Yeah. Thank Professor Jyotirmoy for that. Multi-community area. And this moral policing, the word is coined in the context of Hindutva in the 90s onwards, where faith, not that they will attack everyone. So it's presence of the Bangla Muslim community. Here it is happening in a village. I don't think it has anything to do with the yes, there is a morality built within that society. Maybe as you were saying, it is post Bengal Renaissance, or maybe even earlier. Not but this kind of this action of the few boys is also important because it is something different from the earlier one, the patriarchal morality that existed. Here there is a presence of the technology. They film it, simulate it, so the video becomes viral. So in that, the entire incident and the aftermath of that happens. So we need to see this incident further in this, not simply attributing it to the old morality that would have existed, or to the Hindutva moral policy. So this
Exactly,
something
yes,
else that is happening there.
But this is a very realistic kind of representation. This is what happens in the villages. Not necessarily between Hindu or Muslim, within the community itself, they wanted to, bring a kind of morally good young people. And sometimes, if an attractive girl, most of the boys would be after, she happens to be one particular boy, the whole boys would gang up against that particular boy, even the girl. These are the kind of situations. But
Yeah,
apparently
this
this.
morality is different.
Yeah.
No, but that's what the interesting is. But the way that is depicted is a kind of a moral policing post-Hindutva, in the sense that the whole act which is depicted in the formalist frame of the film is a post-Hindutva. You don't know who they are and you perpetrate that violence. That is what interesting to me. That's what as Tarakeshwar said, it is not between Hindus and Muslims as we see in Karnataka, but it can be between the castes in Karnataka. But in castes in Karnataka, you don't see moral policing of that sort. There are killings, of course, once they get married or once they get loved. But this kind of moral policing, it is the completely unknown people coming and attacking is a kind of a thing post-Hindutva. That is what Tarakeshwar is saying. And that's what the frame in that movie depicts like that. That's what I'm interested to know from Jyotirmoy.
Yes, yes. Patrice, can I come again, little?
No, Jyotirmoy, I think he's trying to ask you, who do you think these people are who were shown as assaulting these kids, these school kids? Who do you think?
In my opinion, actually, I can identify the situation. If in my village this kind of happens, then this mostly be the kind of local ASU leaders, local Assam students union, because they have units every villages. So they actually consider them to be morally very, highly moralistic kind of individuals if they become part of that kind of an organization. Local ASU leaders would look for this kind of victims in order to make a society very clean one. And this is a very common kind of occurrence. This has nothing to do with a very big, you can say, Hindutva sort of an element as such. This is a very common occurrence happening with these young boys. They would mostly be in the 13s or the early teens or late teens as such. Whenever they would find one couple is sitting together. It's a very, very common occurrence. And this mentality, this particular attitude has become quite rampant post 85 reality of Assam, after the Assam movement as such. Because this is a movement when these youngsters became very powerful in the sense that they became the almost custodians of society, custodians of academic institutions, custodians of social institutions in every respect. So now they have taken over this particular church even to clean society morally. And within their own parameters of morality, they would try to identify who are in the wrong. And that they would like to give instant kind of justice as such.
Okay.
Interesting. This is very interesting.
I'm afraid we'll have to wind up the discussion soon. We just have about 4 minutes left. We are all deeply indebted to Jyotirmoy and Pompey as well for your local insight into this movie. And thank you, Shangita. Thank you, Praveena, and all of you and all the rest who have joined in this discussion. I'm sure we've all learned a lot. And thank you, Nikhila, for organizing this. And I think the film, a very sweet, poignant film. And I think Rima Das's portrayal of children is particularly remarkable. In both our movies till now, I think that is something that really comes across beautifully. Her understanding of the mindscape of a child, and that portrayal is really very movingly done in both the movies, particularly so in Bulbul Can Sing. And the exterior and the way she's able to frame the shots of the landscape, the exteriority of the landscape and the interiority of a child's mindscape are almost, complementary to each other in both her films, Village Rockstar and Bulbul Can Sing. So with this, I think we will be winding up. We have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much.
If anybody wants to just make a quick remark or anything, we just have 2 minutes. You may. Anyone, a quick remark?
Nikhila, the host, can wind it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it has been a really very, very interesting and engaging discussion for all of us, particularly that Jyotirmoy and Pompey could join us today. There were many things that I seem to have missed while watching the film that I learned after listening to them pointing it out. So in that sense, I think it's very invaluable that they're bringing, they're bringing in all these points, and maybe I have to go back and revisit the film in the light of this discussion again. Thank you all once again for joining us, and hope to see you in our next discussion. In the meanwhile, if anyone has suggestions for the next film that we'll be watching and discussing, please post on the group. We are a small Facebook group called Talking Films Online. Geeta inspired us to start this Facebook group some time ago. We have been having discussions on films since then. So we look forward to all your participation, both like this via Zoom, but you're also welcome to post on the Facebook group page. Thank you all very much and have a very good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night.